My story starts in 1986 in the north of England. I would have been about 16 years old. I was in my last year of senior school, and this was a really strange event. It just seemed to start from nowhere. There was no build up to it. Everything was what you'd call normal. But I'd gone to bed this one particular night, and I'd gone to sleep, and I was woken up, and I lay on my left hand side, and I woke up and the first thing I saw was the clock radio, and it was illuminated, and it said 3:15 a.m. Then suddenly I became aware of a light that came into my room. Now this was really strange because the light was like an iridescent light. It was so bright, it was almost blinding, and it filled my entire bedroom. Now my bedroom was painted black because I was going through a teenage spell of being morbid, and I liked black. And my bedroom was so dark that even when I put my lamps on, it was never bright. So this light was so unusual because it filled a really dark room, and I didn't understand it, and it was really strange because have you ever had a sense of something is on its way? I suddenly felt this invisible force, and it was like somebody coming up behind me and grabbing hold of me on the side of my shoulder and pulling me onto my back. But there was nothing there. But I felt something coming, and I ended up laid on my back, and I was stretched out, and the feeling I had was that I was laid in a coffin. It was absolutely terrifying because I couldn't move my fingers, I couldn't move my toes, I couldn't move anything, and I was just absolutely paralysed. I tried to scream, but nothing came out. It was like the words and the screams got stuck in my throat. And that's when I noticed something. As I was laid on my bed, I was looking towards my bedroom door, and my door was in an alcove. And suddenly it was like black ink appearing above the door in the alcove on the ceiling, and it started to spread out bigger and bigger until it spread out and filled the entire alcove. And that's when I saw them come down, and it's so hard to explain, but it was like this blackness just coming straight towards me. And the next thing, they appeared as monks. I can't think of another description that is as close as this one. Around my bed was about 8 hooded figures, and each one of them was quite shapeless. They were really, really tall. They looked like they nearly touched my ceiling, and my ceiling would have been about 7 foot high. And they were so thin, it was unbelievable, but they appeared to be wearing black robes, and the hood was pulled over what would be the face. But there was no features, there was no face, there was no hands. All it was black cloaks. It was absolutely petrifying. I couldn't understand what it was or what they wanted. It was so real. I knew I wasn't dreaming. And then they started chanting. It seemed like a chant, and it was almost robotic. It was low and monotone, and it did have a kind of like a robotic sound to it, but it was also very deep. And I couldn't understand the language. It wasn't anything I've ever heard or known. It was just completely unknown to me. And this happened night after night, and it was always 3:15 a.m. And I took it for so long, but it was so petrifying that I started to become really scared of going to bed. And one morning I came down and I broke down, and I said, I can't take this anymore, I can't do it. It took it a few times for it to happen before I could speak out, because I knew I wouldn't be believed. I knew people would say you was just dreaming, and I knew that I wouldn't get any kind of answer to what was going on. But things just became so bad, I couldn't take this no more, and so I started to speak and talk out. The next thing I know, the vicar is coming to the house to see us, and he says, I'm going to do a blessing on the house. And we did a walk around, and he did his prayers and everything, and he'd only been in our parish for a week or two. He didn't know anybody. But afterwards he says to my mum, and I heard him whispering to her, and he said, this is really, really bizarre. I've only been here a couple of weeks and already my phone is ringing off the hook. He said, do you know how many phone calls I've had from this estate since I came? Over 36 phone calls from people saying that they've got ghosts, poltergeists, ETs, all these strange things. He said, I'm going to have to get the Archbishop of Wakefield involved in this because I can't do this on my own. I don't know what to do. After he'd gone, it continued to happen and I became increasingly distressed. I just could not cope no more. It came to a point where I was so fearful of going to bed, I just could not sleep. Eventually, I was put under a doctor's care and he just didn't know what to do with me. And I was at school one day and the headmistress called me through and she said, you need to tell me what's happening because I can see you're really struggling at school and your grades have gone down and you just don't appear to be well. So I told her and I thought, this is crazy. I know, I'm telling her that I have shadow people coming in my room at night. And this is a Christian school and they believe everything's satanic or it doesn't exist. I just didn't know what to do, and before I knew it, some kind of meeting must have gone on behind my back because the next thing I know, I'm in a psychiatric hospital. I'll do a story on that alone. But I stayed in there for over a week. I was diagnosed with sleep paralysis by the psychiatrist, and this was based on a 30-second conversation. I didn't believe that's what I had, but I accepted that's what he thought, so who was I to argue with a psychiatrist? And so I was sent home. It continued to happen for a while, and I just could not take no more. I had periods where my sister or my mum would sleep with me in my room and they'd bring a crucifix and a Bible, but nothing happened when they were there. Nothing. Then one day I was sat at the kitchen table and I was crying and I was really depressed because I felt like, not that I was crazy, but that everybody else was, because I knew this was real. It was not just a dream. It wasn't. And that's when my foster brother opened his mouth and he said, come with me. Now my foster brother hardly spoke 2 words, let alone to me, because we didn't get on. He wasn't much older than me, and he was what I called a geek. I just didn't like him, but this day he said, come up into my room, and I went into his room and he said, look at my walls. And when I looked at the walls, they were covered in pictures, and they were all done in black ink. And I said, what's this? And he said, I draw this. And I said, when did you learn to draw? And he said, look at the pictures. So I looked at the pictures and I was absolutely amazed because they were so intricate and so well done, and they looked familiar, but I didn't understand why. And there were pictures of like mega cities, unlike anything I've seen before. Not even like the big cities like New York. They were just skyscrapers beyond anything I'd ever seen, and they appeared to be like pods floating in the air with people in them. And I said, what's that? And he said, that's how they use their transportation up there. They sit in these pods and they use the mind to go where they want. And I said, but where is this? And he said, that's the place they come from. And I said, who? And he said, look at that picture there. And I looked at another picture and there they are, the shadow men. And he's drawn them. And I said, how did you know this? Where did this come from? And he said, They come and see me all the time. And I said, are you scared? Are you scared? And he said, no, I'm not scared. And I said, who are they and what do they want? Now, he told me that they were interdimensional beings and they were coming to show him the future and they were coming to show him where they came from. And I was absolutely fascinated by it, and he'd drawn them all. And he said, I'm not scared. They're not trying to scare you, Kelly. And I said, but they are scary and I don't like it and I don't want them to come back anymore. I don't like what they're doing to me. Shortly after this, these episodes just completely stopped. And they never happened again. But not long after this, my dad said, I never said anything at the time. And the reason I didn't is because you wasn't in the right frame of mind. But I'm going to tell you something now. One night I got up to go to the bathroom, and as I walked past your bedroom door, I saw a bright light coming from under your door. And I knew it wasn't a lamp or a light that you had, because it couldn't have possibly been that bright, especially when you've painted your walls black. He said, I thought it was strange, but I was half asleep at the time and I thought, it's nothing, it's just me. And so he let it go. Now that confirmed to me that there was a light in my room. And my brother confirmed to me that I wasn't seeing things. And the fact that the vicar had said that so many calls had come from this estate in this period of time told me I was not alone. Now, many years later, going up to the age of about 43, I talked about this publicly on a forum, and the next thing I know, I was invited onto a radio show. And I just told my story on the radio, and the next thing, there was a message sent to the radio station. And it was a message from a girl that used to live on my road when we were kids. I knew the family, but not very well. I just knew them by name and we'd say hello. But this particular person had sent a message saying she's not lying. Because at that period of time, the exact same thing happened to me. And this conversation has brought it all back. And so again, I knew that was my confirmation. That was, again, I wasn't imagining it.